They knew the gun was
we
legal.
should
They
be
lied.
live now.
Sent the low-res video on purpose.
I'm on the
mistrial
back
with
here
prejudice.
with
See, and that's the thing. I think they need to press on Jump Kick Man.
He's got the best
they
stream
need
going.
to cite the media reports that they've seen.
I just feel like they need an expert
go after that
on their
and say, this is the guy.
here.
We need to know, did this guy approach the state? Because it kind of looks like this guy approached the state. Subpoena this guy. Get him in here. Ask him.
That and the handbrake software. Right. Yeah. Because now, I mean, that's been seen by the whole world. Right. It doesn't take some, crazy investigator to really dig too far to see that, because people can just go to YouTube and take a screenshot.
I think I agree with the handbrake software. I think explaining handbrake and why it matters to the judge is going to be an uphill battle. And I think that unfortunately, Richards, I don't know about Sharafisi, but Richards does not seem to be able to adequately explain the technical issues. And I know his like down home folksy attitude may resonate with the judge on the tech issues, but I think at some point you need someone to come in and say, Judge, I'm a certified, like bring in your IT guy from the firm. The judge, this is our IT guy.
Did a good job yesterday. She did a great job of explaining things.
But we have here defense counsel and a bench. None of them have cojones. That's really the problem. None of them have cojones. We have a judge who won't issue. He'll bark and bark and bark, and then there's no bite at all. He'll come all the way up and scream in someone's face and just close his mouth and just be like, okay, fine, like settle back down and just start like reassessing, like, who am I barking? Why am I barking? What was the whole topic we were talking about? I guess that's another way to look at it. And then we've got defense counsel. They can't ask for what it is they want. One of the reasons that at the end of every day, I come and I explain to the audience, I say, look, Nick here deserves every penny of what he gets. The other people on the channel here, all we're looking for is your subscription. That's the only compensation we get. The reason I do that is because if you cannot directly express what it is.
Good, I am live. Awesome.
Sometimes you need to just step up to the plate and say, look,
man, live. Why is it so difficult?
You want to know why? Because I'd like to get your subscription. And the reason that Legal Bites is sitting here,
I mean, honest goodness,
is because she wants to get your subscription. If we don't,
everyone subs, so please
we're not going to get it, or far less. It's like much less likely to get it. Similarly, defense counsel, when they step up to the plate.
This is why my husband loves you, by the way, Joe.
When they step up to the plate. But
he tells me this all the time.
You need to say, we deserve a mistrial with prejudice. Here's why. This is the standard under the law. This is the breaches that we saw of regular courtroom action and regular rules of ethics that the prosecutor is obligated to abide by.
There are rules of ethics. I'm glad he said that, because I was looking at some stuff last night, and there's some rules of ethics here, I think, that are at play.
Violated 6 times this trial. You need to say that, and because of that, he's entitled to mistrial with prejudice. This cannot be rectified with a new trial or saying, let the jury look at this. The only way this is rectified is a mistrial with prejudice. And you have to, but if you don't have the cojones to stand there in front of a judge, and you have a judge who, even when he sees it for himself, doesn't have the cojones to say, what the hell's going on here? I'm throwing this case out. So then how will it ever happen? So I'm asking you, Nick, tell me.
So I'm just absolutely blown away with how this has a Twitter
I think
live
it happens
stream
in the way that we're not seeing.
This is
awesome. That is with the defense counsel asking. It's exactly what you're saying. The defense counsel, and I don't know, maybe Mr. Branca who's joining us has a slightly different opinion. I don't know, but I have seen the judge dangling the carrot in front of the defense counsel the entire time. And I feel like Judge Schrader is waiting for them to just press him and say, Judge, after all of this,
you guys, if you have not listened to this Rakita live stream, it's awesome. Yesterday, it was like 9 hours straight. I mean, this is just
prejudiced him. But welcome to the show, Andrew.
Andrew's awesome. This guy is an awesome self-defense lawyer.
Happy to be here as much as I can. I will say, another name for a lawyer is an advocate, and I don't see these people advocating for their clients, fighting for their clients.
Right.
I mean, my perspective of the law is, if you're a criminal defense attorney, you're a fighter.
This is really cool.
A fighter for hire for that client, and to just sit there passively like you're some kind of bureaucratic meeting where papers are going to be shuffled and some mediator is going to come to a decision when the kid's life is at stake. I mean, he's looking at life in prison without possibility of early release.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario. And by the way, even the lesser offenses, even if they only convict him on one of these lesser included, that's 10 years. That's 10 years in prison.
10 years and 10 years in a
plus
felony
5,
that follows you.
Plus 5 for the gun. So 15 years.
Right.
Is the minimum sentence he's looking at if he's convicted on anything.
And a felony that follows you into every job application, that follows you into every apartment you try to get. Your credit is, well, luckily he probably won't have a lot of credit to destroy. So he would be building that back up. But a felony conviction with years and years of incarceration is life destroying. You are starting over when you get out. And
well, I mean, you're talking about Kyle trying to start over
at almost 35 years old, without ever having a chance to really get out there. He's been under this under the.
This is why you have repeat offenders. I mean, what do you do?
So to have that change is,
and I hate to say it, but look at this kid. How do you think he's going to fare in prison?
Yeah,
not well.
If they give him an AR, he'll do just fine.
Yeah, but everyone thinks he's a racist. So unless
racism is not
racist
against the law,
you think he's not going to get like bullied or
like you can't send somebody to jail for the rest of their life for being racist.
Said, by the way,
I mean, how would you even prove that somebody is racist?
It's not just that we're called.
The definition changes.
The rules of professional ethics require you to zealously advocate on behalf of your clients.
I'm totally going to kick off YouTube today.
We've being lacking here on behalf of the defense. There's just no zealousness. But I am curious, to get thoughts from both of you. Now, assuming that there is a mistrial without prejudice, and he comes back through this thing all over again, what exactly do you think will go better the second time around? Assuming that we're not going to see a change of counsel because of this guy who's such an influence on the Rittenhouses, and we're stuck watching Mark Richards and Sheriff Feasty go through this in this part 2. What do you think will go better now that they know the strategies of the states?
I think one thing that could go better.
Oh, I mean, obviously, part 2. They can't do that.
To take a particular strategy, to take a particular line of argument, and that has kind of worked for them. So that's what leads me to believe that there's a possibility that they would be able to analyze what they did and analyze what other people have seen, what other people have said, and to make modifications from there.
200%.
Yeah.
I don't know why they need to be urged to advocate aggressively for their client. I mean,
fair.
That's kind of inherent to the job.
That's the rules of professional ethics, is that you must be zealously advocating.
I mean, it shouldn't take the internet to tell them that. I mean, these are experienced attorneys.
Agreed. But everybody can learn a lesson, right?
No, but
that's why it's a practice of law. This is one thing that very early on, one of my best bosses that I ever had it reminded the firm relatively often that, remember, this is a practice of law where nobody is perfect. Everyone is always working on their craft. It's just like any other football player or any other baseball player that is going into a game. They have practice on a regular basis where they get better at their craft. This is what we do every day when we go into the office or into our home office and we're doing legal analysis. We're drafting up memos, we're drafting up filings, we're advocating in court. Those are all things that we are practicing at. And obviously now these are very experienced attorneys, so an argument can definitely be made that they should have gotten to this point in their practice. But
yeah, they're not second-year lawyers.
Of course.
I mean,
this is a capital murder case.
I agree.
Murder case where they can hire
I agree.
anybody.
You know, you do the practice on DWIs and stuff like that. You don't do the practice on, you know.
Yeah.
It would be really funny if that third attorney, the woman on the end, the one who was what was her name? She was the one having the whole engagement with Krause about the video files.
Wisco.
Yeah, Wisco. It'd be really funny if Wisco was sitting there with like headphones listening to our show and just sort of like taking notes and like passing them over to them during the course of a trial, because she's not saying anything the whole time there anyway. It'd be really maybe that would help. I don't know. Maybe if they were listening to the advice of 7 attorneys.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had some kind of an associate or someone back at their firm that is like, hey,
yeah, she's actually
this is something that's going on.
I think Nick
I don't know.
To go to,
but I don't, you know, and then this is another thing that we were talking about. I was talking about with Andrew last night, is the question as to whether the judge is just too overwhelmed, like he's too naive and innocent, and his expectations of what the jury is going to do, and his shock and surprise as to how the media has reacted to him. Everything here reflects an attitude of someone who is just he's an old school judge,
but not,
you know, who coming out of Mayberry, who's used to saying, "Hey, good morning" to everyone, and he's always getting the respect. And all of a sudden now, he's been thrown into a national spotlight where there's a lot of angry people, and they're all having expectations that judgment will be issued based on their emotions, not based on facts. And I don't think he's ready.
And that's probably all true. But defense counsel, they're just sitting there all day too, right? I mean, they have time now to think about this and think about if they've been too passive and if they need to be more aggressive. And the fact that it's still not happening is bewildering to me.
Hey, welcome to the show, Uncivil. Thanks for joining.
Hello, friends. What have I missed today? Anything exciting? Has the world come to an end again?
We've seen Judge Schroeder's like 3/4 of his face a couple times, and that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Nick disappeared on us like 10 minutes ago, so
yeah, because he's got big media appearances.
Well, and he didn't invite us.
Too good for us.
Why don't they just invite the big media onto the panel? Lord.
I know, right? Share the wealth.
I'm communist today. I'll tell you that. What? He has more than us.
Kidding,
he needs
obviously.
to redistribute the wealth.
We've obviously all really benefited from being on this panel.
No.
So
obviously, my tongue is firmly in cheek.
Come on, man.
Yeah, no, this is a phenomenal situation here. Yeah.
And we were before Nick left, we were also talking about how surprising it was that this kind of took off in this way.
Yeah.
That so many, not just this stream, but also Crowder's stream. The fact that yesterday there were over 200,000 people watching between the two streams.
Yeah.
And I mean I agree. It's funny because it's like I don't know if you guys have been getting these kind of messages, but people saying like the only thing that'll be sad about this trial being over is the fact that you guys won't be doing this anymore. Oh, yeah. Or I hope you guys continue doing collaborations together. But it's funny because I mean Andrew's a little bit of a newer face to our group, but like we've been most of us have actually been live streaming together on and off in various groupings.
Absolutely.
Over various channels for months now.
Andrew, are you going to be one of the regulars now? Are you going to collab with us on the reg?
I mean, if I'm invited, sure. It's
all right.
I mean, I've been covering these kind of trials all the way back to Zimmerman. I'm not very internet savvy, so I don't know how to do all this stuff that you guys do. But I'm certainly happy to be on. But listen, this is a growth industry.
Absolutely.
People don't stop shooting each other, and the trials are not going to become less politicized. So there'll be more. Trust me. There's too much money to be made and too much political capital to be made. If necessary, I mean, let's face it. This is basically a fabricated prosecution right here. This would never be brought under normal circumstances. So if necessary, the political actors, politically motivated prosecutors will fabricate cases like this that have essentially no legal merit, but they want the theater, and there's money to be made.
Mm-hmm. And the media keeps creating more and more theater of this. They try and stoke more and more division of black versus white and rich versus poor and all this other. And the more divisions you have, the more warring you have, the more likely you are to see situations like this where there is a powder keg in a little town that explodes and people are dead, and that leads to more trials.
They can't give up mask.
It's awful how we're all puppets. That's what it feels like. Society.
I mean, if this goes sideways and Kenosha burns again,
give it
up. You get another Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. This is a perpetual cycling thing,
yeah,
right?
It's a positively,
Kyle gets off,
positively
riot,
reinforcing
another
cycle.
self-defense. The wheel just keeps turning, man.
Right. And I mean that the little bit of irony of for us sitting in our seats now is that, I mean, we obviously have benefited from this as well. So it arguably would benefit us as well if there's if the same controversy continues. But I don't know about you guys, but I would like to see this case resolved and move on to something else, like the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, maybe, or
I'd like to see justice
Jussie
done.
Smollett, maybe any of these other ones.
I've been pretty consistent throughout. I'd like to see justice done, and this has been a travesty of justice in many different ways. And in many ways, at least in my opinion, because of the defense. I mean, the prosecution has pushed the envelope and gone beyond it in a lot of ways, but I still think, on balance, the defense is the ones that are totally out to lunch. Yeah. I mean, especially if no one's going to challenge them, the prosecutor just keeps pushing the envelope. Why not?
I'm brought back to what Jeremy from the quartering said, which is, at the end of the day, the video is the video. You can look at that video 400 times; it's not going to change. And the video there is so pristine, it's impossible to believe that anyone could look at that and come back with a guilty verdict. So, by that logic, Binger can try this case 100 times. He's never going to convict Kyle. You know, so
yeah.
I mean, you hope that's true. That's why my biggest concern is those lesser includeds. Those lesser includeds terrify the bejesus out of me. I don't see.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. So, have we ever clarified for certain whether or not the defense has an absolute right to reject the lesser includeds in this state? That's what it sounded like when he asked Kyle. It sounded like Kyle has an absolute right to exclude him.
I would be very surprised. I mean, that's not been my experience anywhere else. Are you aware of states that do that?
No, I'm
because
not
normally
aware of any states.
It's, they were if you're charged with the higher level offense, you're effectively put on notice.
Yes, I agree with you. Everywhere else, that's what. But there was this whole colloquy with the defendant, where asking, it's like, do you want these lesser includes or not? And at least to me, it implied that if he's like, no, I object to this, it implies that he has an absolute right to say no.
If not an absolute right to say no, then it'd be influential in something that happens, rather than him having zero control over it. Certainly, I
don't think the judge actually asked him, "Do you want these or not?" I think the judge said, "Do you have any objection?" I think the judge was just trying to clear away, wave away any possible future grounds for appeal where the defendant, where Kyle could say, "Well, I didn't know I was at jeopardy for that. Maybe my lawyers knew, but they never told me."
There does seem to be a
That's
court of appeals case on this point, exactly, and that's why they asked the question. But
I think we talked about it at some point during this trial, and I think that was the reasoning in Wisconsin, is that there was a history of that happening to someone that the defendant basically didn't realize or didn't understand what was going on, and would have objected if they had known. So now at least, I don't know if it's just Judge Schroeder or if it's every judge in a criminal court in Wisconsin, but the modus operandi seems to be now to make sure through a direct communication with the defendant that they fully understand what's going on.
So on the underlying question of whether or not the defense should have objected to whether or not they have grounds or not, which I don't know that they do, but assuming they'd be successful in the objection, should they make the objection to the lesser includeds? My mind tentatively says yes, but that's a soft conclusion. I think because the case is so strong, why give some option for the compromise? But I'm open to massive.
But I mean, the compromise is not great. I mean, it's not like so you have a certain level of risk, right, with the charged offense. So first-degree reckless homicide, you're looking at whatever it is, a reckless endangerment. I think it's 12 years. Well, the second degree, which is the lesser included here, is 10 years.
Yes,
and both of those are +5 for the gun. So we're really looking at 17 years and 15 years. I mean, you're not getting. It's not like it's half the sentence.
Right.
If the jury compromises on the lesser included, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. at least as to the recklessness and to even to the murder charges.
So if I could say no to a lesser included, that's only 2 years less out of 17 years. But doing that, I have to give up them finding utter disregard for human life beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not a good deal to me.
I wish we could understand more about the whole situation there with this controller. What's the name that Robert Barnes always references him? The one who's influencing and making all decisions for Kyle. And
the security guard, I forget the name.
David, I'm blank. He actually called me a couple weeks ago, and I'm blanking on his name, but it's David something.
But he called you. If you don't, I don't know if you can say this, but is this in context of you potentially working to help Kyle?
All he asked me is, would I be fine if they sent? They don't want to talk to the media, apparently. So he said, "Listen, is it okay with you if we send media inquiries to you to talk about the case?" And I said, "Well, of course. Just keep in mind, I'm not speaking on behalf of you. I'm not speaking on behalf of Rittenhouse or the defense team. I only give my own opinion. But if you want to tell newspapers to call me, it's okay with me." And that was the extent of the conversation.
Chat thing, David Hancock, and it's very disconcerting that's you look at who it is that he's hired, and you start questioning whether Hancock has Kyle's best interest at heart or not.
Who's Hancock?
Because I don't really know anything about these people, and I like Robert Barnes a lot, but I have no insight into these relationships, and obviously people were a team and now they're not a team, and there's lots of dynamics that kind of situation creates, and it's being just a pure outsider, it's impossible for me to have any informed view of any of that. I do find it a little odd that they would want to send media to me, because I told them explicitly, listen, you guys have been doing an okay job. I've not had much negative to say, but if something happens I think is negative, I'm going to talk about that. And sure enough, a couple days later, they had the closing and I didn't like it, and I wrote about that. So you'd think if you were going to have someone talk to the media that you would recommend the media talk to, it would be one of your own people, to make sure you keep, control of that messaging. But I don't know.
Main thing is you hear...
That would require them to be competent. Which,
I mean, it just reflects, again, that they seem not to understand how the media coverage is influencing every dynamic of this case, including how the judge, obviously, is responding to the dynamics of this case.
Really unfortunate.
And they've just completely given up control over that. And I'm not the answer to that for them, because I don't work for them. So...
No one's the answer to them for them, because no one works for them, it appears. Right? They have not employed even the free help that was offered. And I'm not saying they should have necessarily, but Legal Bites and I were talking early on in the show, and to me, that has been one of the critical misses of this is just how much the defense underestimated how big this case would be. And that is, if they get another bite at the apple, right, that is something they need to fix, in my opinion.
But are you confident that they will? Are you confident that they will fix it? That Mark Richards will fix it? I think this is. I think we're looking at a personality mindset of like this is how I'm going to run things. The same way that Schroeder has his mindset, which makes him who he is, and we all have our own mindsets, which influence our personalities and how we like to operate professionally and personally and things of that nature. So I think in certain ways we're looking at the mindset of Richards, that he likes to work, with him and maybe Sheriff Feasey, who's not. I think he's of counsel, but he's not going to be bringing in a lot of outsiders. He doesn't want to have outside help. He has his vision as to how he wants this trial to run.
But again, we have seen that they are able to listen when they've heard of a very good strategy, right? Because at least if what was said the other day is to be believed, it seems like someone is watching and listening.
I guess I would distinguish between strategy and tactics. So when there's a particular point that's brought to their attention, like Kyle had the gun at low ready, he wasn't actually pointing it at somebody, that kind of fact specific thing, they'll grab that to make sure that it's addressed. But that's a tactic. That's not their overall strategy. The strategy would be like, hey, we need a new way to deal with this judge, or we need a new way to deal with this media. Something broad and overarching over the case. And I don't see any changes like that. And look, if they were doing a great job, as close to perfect as you could reasonably expect, well, then you wouldn't expect any changes. But when they're falling short of where they could be, and then they're not making use of outside help, and it doesn't have to be people on the internet. There's people you hire to do communications and jury selection and all this other kind of stuff. Well, then you got to hire them. It's not like they don't have the resources.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just terrible. They should have had a media person responding to every one of these news stories, characterizations, tweets that are out there that Kyle shot a bunch of black people or whatever the lie of the day was. To counter that narrative, call every single one of those reporters and say, do you know the actual facts are different? Because I can send you the actual facts. I can talk about, you can have a news report that's completely different from what your competitors are doing that provides genuine insight. But that's like a full-time job, right? Because news coverage is 24-hour news cycle. So you need someone who's dedicated.
The importance of a PR team here with a potential mistrial without prejudice looming. The importance of PR here is paramount. I mean, it's so important because, if you can start turning the tide, the only reason we're this far, the only reason this thing wasn't a directed verdict or a jury come back in 20 minutes saying not guilty is because of the media narrative that's been going on for 14 months. So, I mean, that's the only reason, because you have all these people who are sitting there thinking, oh my God, this kid went out there and he didn't belong here and that he's provoking everything. And the only reason anyone died at all is because this kid was there and he deserves punishment for that. Because we have 2 dead bodies now because of him. So he deserves to be punished. And that's the media narrative that's been going on. Imagine if that was being countered with like, wow, kid with strong hometown feels enough strong hometown ties that he tries to save Kenosha from burning to the ground, and now the DA is trying to railroad him for it. And he's trying to punish him when after he survives a mob lynching, and the DA wants to put him away for surviving a mob lynching.
I think how different the jury pool would look like, right? Exactly. If they'd been exposed to that counter narrative for 14 months, right? Even if it just made them ambiguous.
What happened?
About which story was right.
The big fat
they show
guy.
up much less biased, much more impartial.
I don't know. Who cares?
And we all know that jury selection is not really selection, right? It's selection, so you have a limited ability.
He said, well, I don't know how this stuff got manipulated. Talking about the video footage. This video footage is the biggest scam I've ever seen in my life.
Much more likely you
One, the FBI had planes up. Did you know this? They had planes up, videotaping all this stuff with thermal imaging.
Yeah, and that's been the frustrating thing.
The FBI
is twofold.
They lost
exactly what
the high definition resolution. They don't know where it went to.
They
don't know who did any of this stuff. There is nobody to cross
that was
on
supposed to be the job of one man.
Stand. As far as we know, it's all CGI. Then we find out that there was some extra drone footage that someone had put up.
He was
just all kind of like miraculously, like a few days, whatever. Well, I think what happening is some guy.
He got wrapped up in election coverage and all of that stuff, which completely crippled anything he was doing on behalf of Kyle Rittenhouse at the time. And once they finally got Lin Wood out, and again, this is regardless of your opinions of Lin Wood, he clearly focused on the election over the case of Kyle Rittenhouse. But then they got Robert Barnes in there, and he was running the public perception of Kyle for a while. And then that relationship ended up fraying due to, it appears, some disagreements about how the trial would take place. But it was at that point, it was almost already too late. Like where was Lin Wood out advocating for Kyle every single day? Where was he responding to these media? To the media, I frankly never saw him. I saw him raise funds and do very well, and he did a great service to Kyle Rittenhouse organizing that $2 million bail. How many people out there would have the opportunity to get $2 million in bail money? Basically, no one. Kyle certainly didn't. But it's the other aspect of it, and the media has been tainting this case for 18 months, exactly as you were saying.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I mean, they had Robert working with them on their team doing a bunch of this stuff, and maybe the personalities didn't match up. I mean, you have a bunch of people with all type A personalities. There can be conflict there. If you decide if you're lead counsel, you decide you don't want Robert on your team anymore. Okay, I mean that's your decision to make, but you don't replace him with nobody.
Right.
That function still has to be served.
Yeah, and that's been Robert has said his piece about a guy named David Hancock who appears to be somewhat supposed to be in charge of that, but all I've seen from that is the Free Kyle USA Twitter page and web page, and again, that's not sufficient. I mean, you need to hire someone who can pop into a news show, someone who the corporate media will allow to pop into a news show and can answer some of these questions. And again, you had a guy like Barnes who appears on some corporate media from time to time, but there are plenty of other people they could have replaced him with, and frankly, ideally they never would have had to hire Barnes in the first place, right? Because they would have had someone from 18 months ago doing this and making those appearances and showing up, and they just didn't do it, and the money's there, plenty of money is there.
Yeah. So while you were away, I mentioned that David Hancock had called me a couple of weeks ago, not for any legal services. There's no privilege attached to the conversation. He simply wanted to know if it was okay with me if they sent media inquiries to me to talk to the media.
Oh.
And I said, well, of course, I don't care if you want to send media to talk to me. That's fine. Just keep in mind, I'm speaking for me. I'm not speaking for you, for the defense of Kyle Rittenhouse. And if I have something negative to say, I'm not going to hesitate to say it. And of course, 2 days later, sure enough, they did their closing, and I thought it was not great, and I wrote that. But the fact that they're reaching out to somebody like me, who's not representing them, not involved in their defense, feels just as free to say negative things as positive things, to represent, I don't know, what their view of things to the media. That's crazy, because they have no control over me. They have no control over their messaging then. Right.
It's one of the advantages of hiring a lawyer who develops an attorney-client relationship with the person they're representing as a media representative, is that they're bound to advocate on behalf of their client, right? Like the lawyer is bound to do that through the attorney-client relationship and their ethical obligations. So you're hiring an advocate. And that is a big part of our role that doesn't really get talked about. But advocacy in and out of the courtroom is part of what we do. So when you hire someone who is bound like that, they are going to go out there and be positive in the face of everything. And sometimes Amazon, it comes across hollow, right? Like there's Gloria Allreds of the world who do stuff like this, or Benjamin Crump, who he represents some interesting characters from time to time, but it doesn't matter. That's their job, and they go out and do it. And so to reach out and say, hey, can we send random people to you who we have no relationship with is borderline absurd. I'm surprised they would even do. Actually, I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
anymore.
Are you? Yeah, that's what I said.
Hey guys, I apologize. I'm gonna have to duck out completely just for a couple of minutes. I got to do a sound check for something else, but I'll come back in 3 or 4 minutes.
Sounds great.
Good.
Okay, thanks.
I've got to go.
By the way, Kurt, how's it going, man?
I'm good. I heard you had some media this morning. Anything you can tell us about?
Yeah, I just did an appearance on the Glenn Beck show. He was asking
another one. Good for you.
Yep, he brought me back to talk about the mistrial discussion from yesterday, and explain and break down the drone footage issue before the court. And I did get the opportunity to tell the entire world that I thought the defense was being far too passive on this stuff. So
hey, I mean, you're not bought by anyone, right? You can say whatever the hell you want.
Exactly. And I think it's a message that needs to be heard, because if the defense isn't going to hear it from me, maybe they'll hear it from the Glenn Beck show. Maybe they'll hear it from the people listening. Maybe, why aren't you guys ready? Maybe that'll come at dinner time, Thanksgiving, when we're still deliberating.
Here's the thing: you absolutely fight for
Glenn brought up an interesting point right before I was on, though. The OJ trial had 4 hours of deliberation.
You can take that. You can be nice to each other, and you can be all
and I think
lovey-dovey.
he mentioned the trial was 8 months long, which
wasn't the jury in sequester for that period too?
I think it was. That may be why it was so short, because they were like, "Get me out of here."
I think it's also part of the reason sequestering is disfavored now.
Yes, exactly.
But I hope so.
Yeah, it's the whole. This whole thing is going on a long time. It shows how polarized the jury room seems to be. Because it doesn't matter. Like I don't see how you have reasonable people disagreeing on the facts. Like in all honesty, I think you either go, here are the facts, they've been presented to us, this kid's either guilty or not guilty, and I don't see much disagreement there. I think the polarization and the taint that has happened is what's feeding the disagreement, in my opinion. But I don't know. I think I'm biased.
I think one of two things is going to happen today. We're going to get a jury verdict, or we're going to get a note saying that they're deadlocked. I think one of those two things is going to happen today.
I hope so. Because this needs to
is
stop being a sword of Damocles over Kyle's head for a little bit. The trial and the jury part of it. Because if they're not there after 3 days of deliberation,
Jack Prosby,
it's 24 hours.
Especially after yesterday when they had the opportunity to get the video and unlimited video with both the laptop and the TV. So whatever they're trying to convince, who's ever trying to convince whoever that they did or did not see something, it's like, what else is there really left to do, right?
I'm actually really torqued off by the fact that they came into the courtroom to watch the drone footage.
Torqued off
because
as opposed to bringing the footage to them.
Yes, I think the inconsistency between those two things, between those two acts, paints a light one way or another on the footage as special evidence.
Yes.
And so I this is another thing I mentioned on Beck. First, they asked for the videos the first time. They got them relatively quickly. They asked for the drone video, and then it's like, oh wait, we need to talk about that. That is significant. The second level of significance is the fact that we're gonna, we gave you all this footage to watch up here. We're going to bring you down into the courtroom, clear everybody and the entire media out, have the bailiffs sweep everything. The judge and the attorneys are going to leave, and you're going to have a new deliberation room just while you watch this video. And they've got to be thinking, but we just watched video. We just watched video on this laptop. What the hell's wrong with the laptop?
Exactly.
Yeah, bringing special emphasis to a video the judge said the word queasy on many, many times. Fun.
And getting even more queasy.
Yes.
And that's exactly why. That is exactly why the defense needs to go, judge, if you're queasy about this evidence, we've got two options. You can determine that the state went too far and mistry this with prejudice. That's what we would prefer. But the only other option, Your Honor, is to determine that the taint of how this evidence is and the queasiness that you're displaying from it shows that we need to mistry this and have them have another chance to introduce it properly, because they didn't do it this time. And that's the queasiness you're experiencing. And Judge, that means that we need to have a mistrial either with prejudice or without, and it needs to happen before we waste any more of the jury's time and before we get any more confusing incidents where the jury is asking questions about video they've already seen.
Yeah, how you're not there every day on motion practice. Can we have it now? Can we have it now?
Yeah.
It's like,
Judge, what new things do we have to learn tomorrow for you to disable this today? And why if they have not supplemented their motion with jump kick man allegations right now, and like, I don't think they can confidently say, we know jump kick man went to approach the attorney's office with this request. I don't think they can confidently do that, but there are media reports that this guy's been identified, that put him under oath, ask him the questions, right? Like, you
can at least put in a paper asking the court to inquire.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to necessarily accuse them of anything. This seems to be public information out there. We'd like the court to simply ask the opposing side whether or not there's any validity to this, and or whether they lied to the court blatantly.
Exactly. Or get ask the reporters, right? You don't always be careful subpoenaing a journalist, but you can ask the journalist, hey, do you want to give us some insight in how you verified the information about him approaching the district attorney? You don't have to name sources, but then if they give you insight, maybe you do subpoena them. I don't know. Maybe you get someone to say, here's how we verified this story, right? That is a possibility.
I just asked the judge to ask the question flat out and see if they want to just blatantly double down on lies even more.
Krause is good at it. He can sit there and he can lie for several minutes at a time about things that he claims 2 minutes later to not understand. That blew me away. The fact that he would say, I don't understand how any of this works, and then go on to explain exactly how this problem happened in his mind is
in every which way except for the correct way.
Yeah, that's right. So I don't understand how it happened. Here's 14 ways it happened. Yeah.
How did the wrong evidence get to the defense counsel? Wrong answers only.
That's right. Well, you don't want to give the right answer. You want to give every other answer.
I don't know whatever else.
Attorney Tom, I'm sending you the link. I thought you were in the group.
I hope he comes on.
Attorney Tom is in the group.
He's not?
Attorney Tom, Nick just wanted to keep you out because he's jealous.
Sorry, this was not supposed to go this long.
We can see how much Attorney Tom wants to lose his mind today.
I mean, I realized that. So today we started late because I teach at our homeschool co-op, and that has happened 2 weeks ago, and the trial was already going then. I didn't think that we would be here this long. I genuinely thought we would have everything wrapped up by Friday, and then maybe even a decision on Friday.
Was today's homeschool co-op in any way inspired by this case? Maybe a harsh lesson about some truths that's finally.
Let me explain to you guys the law of self-defense.
No, I did.
Maybe some truths about reality and how it's not always a Hollywood picture.
No, today was Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. The
powers of Congress.
Powers of Congress. That's what we were talking about. Although I did mention, I did briefly mention the Rittenhouse case, and because one of my students asked what a riot was. And so we had to talk about what riots can create and then what could create a riot, right? Like not guilty verdict might create a little riot in Kenosha. But yeah, so it was, it's always interesting.
Was this all just so that you could advertise your live stream to these kids so that you can get a few more views?
It's like
indoctrinating young.
No,
wow.
I always tell the kids. Whenever it comes up, I say, because the kid will say, "Wait, don't you have a YouTube channel?" I say, "Yes, and you are not allowed to watch it ever. You should never watch it. That is not a show for children or people."
I love it.
So
that's why I tell everybody: do not watch my show. Do not listen to me.
But no, it's
having been on your show, on your normal show once. I completely agree.
it never has been a show for kids, and it never will be. So
it shouldn't be around.
That isn't what YouTube said.
Who played
That's what they said the other day.
I think that was just entrapment.
Yeah, but the
digital entrapment.
This whole thing is interesting. And again, the last time I taught, I was teaching the homeschool class was during the impeachment of Donald Trump, which was phenomenal time to be teaching that. But this year, if I would have known the Rittenhouse trial would have gone like this, I would have done the class on it. Oh my God,
guys!
Hey.
I gotta turn you down. You're way loud. Ooh. Sorry, it's your fault, but it's mine.
I have a loud voice. I've been told my whole life.
Me too.
Hey,
man.
buddy.
Me too.
Welcome to the show.
What's going on, y'all?
We're just waiting for a jury.
Did you guys hear about this police update?
I can upload a background.
Should I read it from Twitter?
Sure.
Apparently, from the Kenosha Police Department, they said last night a person who is alleging to be affiliated with a national media outlet was briefly taken into custody and issued several traffic-related citations. Police suspect this person was trying to photograph jurors. This incident is being investigated much further.
I've seen a bunch of people talking about someone following the jury bus. So that sounds like that person.
Probably.
From the media. I wonder what a media person even means anymore in a police report now, though.
Right.
Yeah, that used to be the local NBC affiliate, but now it could just be some
YouTuber.
It was me. I did it.
Kurt's out there with the phone running behind the bus. Who are you? Who are you? How are things down in the Lone Star State there, Attorney Tom?
Things are great. It's a very hectic week actually practicing law, but everything is good.
Why? What's in the news that might impact you in some way?
Yeah, I don't know.
What kind of lawsuits
Attorney
could you have possibly filed recently against a certain entertainer?
Mm-hmm.
Can you disclose how many of those lawsuits you filed? If you don't want to, it's fine.
No, probably 36 or so. I don't know the exact number right now, but probably close to 36.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I did see that you posted on YouTube that you're not going to do any videos because of the specific elements that you may be privy to through work product and privilege.
We were the first ones to file. I mean, I think I filed within 24 hours, and we got a TRO. I mean, we spent all of that last week not all last week, but we spent 3 or 4 days on site with experts inspecting, and by the time I got around to where I could make a video, I knew too much information that the public doesn't know, and I didn't want to say something and let some work product slip. So we just
absolutely
passed on that. But what I can't tell you is public news. We have amended our petition. We are now suing Apple Music as well, or Apple, I should say.
Really?
Ooh.
Any? What is the general
Tell us
theory
more,
there, if you don't mind?
I mean, we just they were filming the event, and they were, we believe, very much in charge of why it was designed the way it was, and probably have a lot of footage that we don't have access to at this moment. Regarding internal communications, and a big part of this case is going to be who knew what when. And when you have a top-notch production service like presumably Apple Music or Apple Streaming is, you would think that they probably knew a whole lot. And
and if they don't,
we'll find out.
If they don't, they can exonerate themselves through discovery.
Yes.
Exactly. But that discovery, just managing that discovery, I can only imagine is going to take a lot.
Jeez, I can imagine suing somebody like Apple. I mean,
and
you're going to have a busy Christmas.
Right. And it's certainly not only my group. There's, hundreds of lawsuits filed at this point. So
question,
it's gonna be a whole ordeal.
At any deposition, will you say, "You shut your mouth, fat boy"? Will you do that? Will you channel Joe Jamail?
Probably not. I have some good Joe Jamail stories though. My mentors were like in that same lineage. The Joe Jamail, John O'Quinn, who were the two powerhouses who absolutely hated each other but semi-respected each other. There are some good stories that I probably can't tell on stream, but I.
Tell us backstage.
Yeah, we'll tell you backstage.
So actually, we were talking about David Hancock. Someone just sent me a news report from Mediaite, whatever that is, and apparently David Hancock was on Fox and Friends yesterday to dispute the claim being pushed by Tucker Carlson that jurors are being intimidated into guilty verdict, is what the headline says.
He's there to dispute that claim.
So they're well ahead of the news cycle there. So
why would he do that?
What a crap show, isn't it?
No.
I mean, it's one of the reasons they're asking for a mistrial, right?
Hey, folks, what have I missed?
Well, we just got some breaking news about David Hancock being on Fox and Friends yesterday. David Hancock is, I believe, if I get a detail wrong, please, it's harmless error, but I believe he is in charge of Free Kyle USA, the Twitter account and the webpage, and he is kind of involved in managing that public side of it. But so he was on Fox and Friends yesterday to dispute the Tucker Carlson claim that the jury is or that people are trying to intimidate the jury into a guilty verdict.
So, Nick, I just put the link to that story in the chat. I don't know how this all works, but if you can access that, if you're interested. I haven't fully read it myself, but
Who is this guy? What are his credentials, man? We should go investigate this guy.
Well, now you're asking for foundation.
So here is the. I'll blow up the window. So this is from Mediaite. Now, to be fair, I'm not a big fan of Mediaite, full disclosure in general. But that doesn't mean that their reporting is accurate or not accurate. I'm just not a huge fan. So Rittenhouse spokesman dismisses claim pushed by Tucker Carlson that jurors are being intimidated into guilty verdict. David Hancock appeared on Fox and Friends. Let's see. Hancock denied that the family was worried about the verdict as deliberations stretch on, says that means that the jury is actually looking at the 37 pages of jury instructions and they are paying attention, Hancock said. So no, our position is he was clearly defending himself. There's no doubt about that. And on top of that, that's what I'm confident. That's what the jury verdict will be.
Referring to the family? Is he a representative of the family? Is that his claim?
Yes. I believe there is validity to that claim.
Okay.
In some stretch. And again, Robert Barnes has said specific things about David Hancock. I don't know anything about that. That is for Robert Barnes to tell you. But my understanding is that he is representing the family in some way. But I don't know that I don't know who he is. I don't know if he's a lawyer or whoever.
No, he's not a lawyer. He's told me he's not a lawyer.
Gotcha. Okay, so then Steve Ducey then turned to the pro-Rittenhouse and anti-Rittenhouse crowds gathering in Kenosha in anticipation of the verdict. Wait, are there pro-Rittenhouse crowds? Have we seen evidence of pro-Rittenhouse crowds outside the verdict?
I've seen at least one person protesting pro-Rittenhouse, and she was getting beaten up by
I heard about her on the radio
a guy on the opposite side.
There was some news story where the tone of which was the anti and pro sides were sharing a pizza or something to that effect, which I don't know the merits of that, but
I did hear about that too.
There have been a few. The chat says there's been a few, and believe me, I'm not asking that question in a nefarious way. I genuinely don't know because I've been focused on what's going on inside the courtroom. But I just figured the pro-Rittenhouse crowd outside the courtroom might be the National Guard. That's what I thought. But that was a joke. It wasn't a good one though. So the question was, are you worried that the anti-Kyle protesters might be influencing the jury to try to get a guilty conviction? Okay, so Hancock's, they sure are trying, but apparently they are fighting amongst all of themselves more than they are anybody else. There's a lot of people out there who are curious why they are even there. Has nothing to do with race. This has nothing to do with race at all, period, full stop. So they're trying, but I don't believe the jury is going to let that actually take effect on their decision. That's a weird answer.
Yep.
I mean, I just don't bring the question about race wasn't asked or doesn't appear to be asked. So I don't know why you bring that in.
I mean, maybe because it's been brought up elsewhere. There's still, I mean, you can still find people who think that Kyle Rittenhouse shot a person of color, or at least one person of color, multiple people of color.
I'd also say when summarizing an interview like this, there might be an antecedent race reference.
Sure. Yeah, there could be. There could be. And I'm not going to go verify.
You're giving the benefit of the doubt?
No, I'm actually criticizing the reporting. Whenever you see kind of quotes plucked out like this, I'm not sure that there isn't a longer preface to that question. So
I understand not trusting the news media.
Yeah.
Just who do I not trust more today? The news media or the guy being interviewed?
Yeah. Well, and I'm not a big fan of Mediaite's publication in general from what I've seen. And so it's very possible that they have a sloppily written article there. But well, by the way, welcome to the show, Richard. How's it going, man?
Hey. Yeah. No, I thanks for having me. I was just getting a video up because Activision Blizzard keeps giving me content every single day this week. And so
Richard and Law of Self-Defense. I don't think I've met y'all before. How's it going?
Oh,
we have not met. You and I am very glad to meet you now.
What Law of Self-Defense? What's your name?
Andrew.
Hey,
Andrew Branca.
I'm Tom. And hi, Richard.
Hey,
nice to meet you.
Hey, Tom. I also go by Hogue or whatever pronunciation Viva wants to put on it when he shows up. I don't know if you saw that clip, Nick. I think I'm Hogg's Law.
No, I did not see it, but that's fantastic.
It is. So I'm totally fine with it.
So I was interviewed by the AP for this Rittenhouse story for like half an hour. I was talking solid for how I don't see legal merit to this prosecution at all. And then at the end, I said, yeah, but, innocent people get convicted, despite the legal merits of the case. And that's the quote they used.
That's the sentence.
And if you read that alone, it sounds like I was suggesting there was legal merit to the case.
Right.
I'm always intrigued by how interviews wind up popping out in print. It's you have to be so careful and talk so specifically.
I mean, I literally said because I record all these, as you might imagine. I literally said innocent people get convicted despite the legal merits, or rather the lack of legal merits. And they cut that second part out of the quote.
Unimportant. They're just making it easier, right? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Richard, did you see the thumbnail I put on the video clip of us talking?
No, what'd you put?
Well, I'll show it on stream just a second. I tagged you in it, so I thought you might have had the opportunity. But
I have been running around this morning.
Let me get it pulled up here. Sorry, it made me laugh. There it is. Sorry, I stole your logo.
Can someone explain the astronaut thing to me? Because I'm a little confused by it.
It's a meme format.
This is what we call a meme, Joe. I know
okay.
People of a certain generation may not understand what memes are, but mimetic communication has been around far longer than the internet itself. This is just the way that we do mimetic communication through the internet is with memes.
Right. No, I know the left thinks they can meme also. So you're in good company. I'm just
that
wondering...
was the thumbnail when we broke down the minor in possession law?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I don't know we're going to have
but I am curious if someone explain the joke to me on the whole astronaut behind the astronaut.
You mean the underlying meme?
Okay, so the underlying meme is two astronauts are up in space, and the one looks back at the Earth, for the first time from space, and then finds out it's all whatever, like it's all Ohio, for example, might be the meme, and then there's just the entire globe is the state of Ohio, and then the other astronaut has a gun to the back of his head, and it always has been, right? Like, sorry, kid.
Explaining memes to 80,000 people.
Hey,
so now you're in on the secret. Now we have to.
Has to be changed.
I replaced the gun with my logo, right? But there's normally a gun there because he's about to shoot the guy because he learned the secret. So.
No, I like it. I like it. Thanks. I'm sorry I missed the tag. I've been running.
Oh, how dare you have busyness that you miss my YouTube notification?
It's probably blocking your YouTube notifications to me anyway. I've got nothing but messages about people being unsubscribed to me this week. I don't know if that's association with you. I don't know what's happening.
Most likely.
Ooh, we got something happening here.
That's exciting.
Judge looks like he's got a cough drop. Yeah. Maybe he'll be feeling a little better.
I hope so.
I have mine right here, so we're ready.
I felt like my voice was going today.
Yeah.
I don't know how Attorney Tom is willing to associate with us because he's so apolitical. He might be a guilt by association here.
Oh, is it turn into one of those deals?
Oh, totally.
No.
Oh, wow.
This isn't that political either. Let's be real.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Before the judge, I was going to mention, I was like, I'm pretty known for my apoliticalness, but it's fine.
This case is not that kind of political. This case
isn't. It is.
I have interacted on Twitter the most I ever have, probably ever. I probably look at Twitter once a month or every other month. And because of this, because of we've been messaging each other, I've consumed more Twitter in my life. That is an echo chamber. I can see why everybody hates each other. Because if you look at just Twitter, it's a bunch of people just circle jerking each other. I mean, it's like the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, you can't just jump in and take a big leap in helping at Twitter. You gotta work up a tolerance.
Yep. So the question is, what are we in court for now? Are we? Do we have?
They
motion
might be
practice?
talking about that juror, or the guy that was trying to take photos of the jury.
All right, jury's in.
Because apparently
there's a person in the courtroom taking photos.
No, they were apparently following the bus.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've actually been engaging in TikTok more recently, and to develop my ADD, and my ADD is better than ever now. So, and my motivation there has been Attorney Tom.
I can't do TikTok. I I get into a rage very quickly. Just watching that content makes me want to die.
For me, it's hard enough managing YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, locals, Patreon. Like that's a lot. That's a lot for anyone to be managing. And I don't manage all of them with the same amount of time either.
Do you find any difficulty in running both Patreon and locals with overlap issues or otherwise? Because I've been looking into doing both. To
be totally honest, like those are the ones that I'm kind of like, I guess, newest on. And so I'm much less, one would think I'd be incentivized to be on those the most because that's where you can get financial support. But, but those I'm still kind of getting caught up on what to do with.
So I had a Patreon page for a number of years, and at one point they actually labeled my Patreon channel, or whatever you call it, adult only content.
Me too.
Adult only.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
is there something you're not telling us?
Yeah, right. Well, that stuff's on my OnlyFans page. You got to go there.
Lawoffeetpics.com.
So we actually dumped Patreon and built out our own membership type service thing on our website for our own purposes. But amazingly enough, we still get, I don't know, $150 a month from Patreon contributors. And even though we post on there, clearly we're not putting any more content here. So save your money or join our own membership page, but I guess people forget.
I did the same thing to direct them to locals. Emily, we cannot hear you.
I came for the memes.
Oh,
nice. I'll walk you through them. I'll explain them to you.
knowyourmeme.com is going to be your new best friend. It's kind of like Urban Dictionary for the meme challenge. And I know it's authority because it was filed in the Toddy Westbrook defamation suit, and the court was asked to take judicial notice.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much, Emily.
All right, here we go.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Oh, my mic is here.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey,
morning. Hey, everybody. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Emily. Hey, Viva.
Tom, nice to meet you. I think
questions. There's been conversation around this morning. We had asked the media coordinator to determine possible whereabouts of certain persons.
That's vague.
Because we received a report this morning from the Kenosha Police Department that last evening, and let me just set this background here. The jury in this case is being transported from a different location in a bus with windows covered so that they don't have to look at aren't exposed to any signs by one side or another or interest in the case. And
take pictures of them.
So I'm going to call it a sealed bus. And that's been done every day. And then they're brought here to this building. And last evening, a person who identified himself as James G. Morrison and who claimed that he was a producer with NBC News, employed for MSNBC, and under the supervision of a person. What's going on? Oh, okay. Under the supervision of someone named Irene Bayan in New York for MSNBC. The police, when they stopped him because he was following at a distance of about a block and went through a red light, pulled him over and inquired of him what was going on, and he gave that information and stated that he had been instructed by Ms. Bayan,
What's he
New York, to
following the jury.
follow the jury bus. The matter is on further investigation at this point. And the media has asked questions about it. That's the latest I have.
I do not have a thing for James
and he was ticketed for violating a traffic control signal. He's not here today from what I'm told. And I have instructed that no one from MSNBC News will be permitted in this building for the duration of this trial.
Nice.
This is a very serious matter, and I'm
Finally,
don't know
a
what the
decision.
ultimate truth of it is, but absolutely it would go without much thinking that someone who is following the jury bus, that is a it's extremely serious matter, and will be referred to the proper authorities for
this prosecutor's office.
further
Good.
action.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wreaking havoc.
You know what though? What he said was
that's it.
Yeah, apparently that's it. But that, we're going to try to get to the truth of the matter. But he said the person was pulled over and said they were told by their supervisor to follow the jury bus. I don't know what else you need to get to the truth of the matter. It seems like we have all of the facts.
Well, purportedly purportedly MSNBC was denying that anybody worked for them. So apparently that may be the truth of the matter. Was he misrepresenting who he worked for? Or is MSNBC running for cover and being like, what? We don't know who that is.
What they've disavowed on knowledge, like this is freaking Mission
Look at this.
Impossible.
You will
we need
social media.
Come on, Irene. Get down here and testify.
You know the name.
That name is getting, I'm sure that name is getting Googled right now because, I mean, what's the likelihood? I mean, maybe the guy was making it up, but.
That's, that's a
Depends
specific.
on how publicly available it is, right? Like if it was a legitimate operation and they wanted to just use the cover, he might have been prepped with that.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, if I'm not going to say I know people that would pull that kind of thing, but maybe I know people would pull that kind of thing, and they would use that kind of cover story. If pulled over, here's the boop boop boop. Here's who the and you get a real name of a real producer.
Yeah, you go to a LinkedIn,
which
profile.
isn't hard to go on LinkedIn and get that.
Not at
True.
all. And usually that your Ray Donovan types have those kind of backstories ready to roll.
Well, as do your hackers when they do social engineering to get to things they shouldn't be getting to. I mean, it's not unheard of. However, I tend to just the jury intimidation and jury tampering is so dark. Like this jury's already having a hard time coming to a decision. It's clear by how long this has taken. Messing with that just pisses me off so much. I'm stammering over my words.
Can somebody educate me as to what we think the current strategy is for the defense? Are they waiting for a verdict, and then if there's a conviction, are they going to ask for a mistrial at this point, or have they already asked for a mistrial? I mean, I'm sorry.
They've asked for a mistrial, both with prejudice and without.
And so the judge is deferring, making a decision until we get a result.
Right. Yes,
right.
That's what it appears to be.
I can see everybody's face.
Yeah. I was just making sure there wasn't them coming right back.
I made my prediction of the day. Everyone tell me if you think it's going to happen, that at some point Krause is going to try and accept the request from Shirafisi for a mistrial without prejudice. And then Shirafisi is going to try to revoke his oral motion for mistrial without prejudice.
Then they're going to argue the opposite.
We're going to have a debate. We're going to have a debate on whether or not there was an agreement on the acceptance of the offer to mistrial.
I agree with all of you. When you were yesterday, I was re-dyeing my hair purple because I have things coming up that I need it to be very purple for. But I was watching
who doesn't
what was going on. I mean, exactly, Joe. I was watching what was going on, and I was shocked that they filed that written motion with prejudice and then walked it in court. I was like, why are you walking back your ask? Just go for the higher ask, and if the judge wants to compromise, let the judge compromise. Don't argue against yourself. Like, don't we learn this at the beginning? Don't negotiate against yourself as a lawyer ever. You stick to your position and then say to the other side, what do you have now?
I think Law of Self-Defense had Andrew Bronco had a good explanation on Good Logic show last night, where he said that he thought that might be coming from Kyle. That, in other words, that Kyle's like, you promised me a verdict in 2 hours. It's now more than 2 days. I'm losing confidence in all of this. Maybe I need a whole new trial approach. I mean, this was the precise debate I had with the defense team which Kyle was aware of in the week building up to the 2 weeks prior to the trial, was, hey, here's our risk. If these kind of jurors get on, apparently the exact kind of jurors that are problematic, according from other courtroom observers, at least, again, we're reading tea leaves. You don't know for sure. But it looks like the foreperson of the jury is a hostile juror. That's a Kyle. That's a real problem for holdouts, because the foreman is the one trying to force everybody to go along with the conviction. You may have 8-9 for acquittal in there, but the foreman is saying no. They're going to say, let's look at more evidence. Let's look at more jury instructions. Let's look at more evidence. Let's look at more jury instructions. And
my longest hang
maybe a
was
professor
11-1 with a 4-person.
How long? Really?
Absolutely right. My longest hang was 11-1 for guilt. The foreperson was not, and refused because the foreperson, to totally cut Robert off in an ADD fashion, but the foreperson is the one who isn't going to reach out to the bailiff and say, we're done, somebody's not cooperating, because they're the one not cooperating. And it really absolutely can prolong the entire process. And I think you're exactly right.
And for people who don't know, jurors almost invariably, they're supposed to select the foreperson before they know which way they want to vote. So, and if I'm right, like the bad juror for Kyle was part of the old establishment, the old Yankees and Scandinavian establishment in Kenosha. Because Kenosha is mostly a working middle-class ethnic immigrant community, mixed of Irish, Italian, Polish, Mexican, and Germans. But there's but the first wave of immigrants there who established disproportionate political and economic and cultural capital long after they lost the voting power were first Yankee populations from upstate New York and that migration pattern, and then Scandinavians. And the problem is they have always been politically hostile and adverse to the ethnic working middle class majority. Kyle has the wrong last name that's from literally the wrong side of the tracks, not just the wrong side of the border for that community. And they're your virtue signaling community. They're the community that they're eager to prove. Yes, they're like the Upper West Side that Wolf describes in the electric Kool-Aid test. About Leonard Bernstein holding his a little party for the Black Panthers, and then their solution to black service was white.
Wait, hold on a second. Before, what the heck is Attorney Tom doing upstairs?
I feel like I'm Alice in the Brady Bunch. I'm in the middle.
What's the baseball bat, though, man?
I have baseball bats. I have golf clubs. I'm at my law firm right now, so
right.
I just stand.
Of course, we all use baseball bats and golf clubs at our law firms.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a weird guy.
That's not a Randy Quaid imitation from what movie was it? Randy Quaid brings a baseball bat to the meeting. He's the attorney. Jumps up on the table. And he goes, "Here's what I don't know. Any of you guys remember that movie or no?"
No.
I don't remember that
I'm
movie.
getting all blanks. Yeah.
I'm just wondering more about Attorney Tom's client intake process at this point.
Yeah, no, look, he needs personal injury victims.
I got 7 people down the hall.
He's like, I'll fight for you, and I'll show you how I'll fight for you with a bat.
I just want
to.
I wanted to follow up here
around like a ninja.
I wanted to follow up here on what Robert was saying, and also what Viva was speculating about what's going to happen going forward with respect to them turning tables. So that's correct. Andrew Branca, when he was on my channel last night, he did mention what Robert said, and we also follow up with the following point that I think is undeniable to all of us, that the longer this goes, the more likely it is that you think that Kyle's not going to get an acquittal, because a 4-hour verdict almost certainly would have been an acquittal. The longer we go, the less likely he's going to be getting acquittal, which is why Kyle could be getting antsy about the fact that, look, yesterday's 2 days, today we're on day 3. How much longer before we worry that that whoever is the holdout here might turn towards conviction? So maybe let's start all over with a mistrial, and that'll be better. I will point this out, though. If the think about the personality of someone who leaps to the front and says, I want to be the foreman. That tends to be a Karen type. If a Karen is sitting there in the jury, they're not going to sit in the background and say, oh, okay, let me let some other person. No, they're going to step up and say, hey, I think that I'm in a good position. I understand a lot about this case and how to run things, and I'll be foreman. And so if he thinks that the next time that he goes, if he does have a mistrial without prejudice, has to have a new trial, that the next time, if there's any Karens there, they're likely to try and grab that foreman role. So unfortunately, this is why we see that Robert's so spot on, that you must have great jury selection to make sure that you can't get people like that in there, because they're likely to be the holdup. And round 2, God forbid, if he ends up having to go through that whole thing again.
Yep. And especially if you enhance that.
I had 2 women I was the prosecutor on the case, but I did have 2 women hang a case for guilt on our second retrial that ended up being a third retrial, homicide, murder of a witness case. And they were unwavering, and it didn't matter what anyone else on that jury said. They held firm, which from my perspective is great. The person we convicted murdered a witness and then the witness's mother so that they wouldn't come to court and testify. Those are the convictions that you want. But there were others who had other biases about the prosecution that wanted to compromise the verdict, and they wouldn't compromise for a lower charge than the special circumstances murder. But that is, when you look at the type, it was 2 middle-aged white women from Brentwood in Los Angeles, very wealthy area. Sounds very similar to what you're talking about, Barnes. And they were completely unmovable. And the more that the jury kind of pushed back on them, the more they were unmovable. And so that ended up being like a week and a half before it hung. So it wouldn't surprise me. However, I think a hang in that circumstance is better than a compromise verdict. If you have people who are pushing for guilt, I think the hang is preferable to a compromise in this case.
Yeah, and I
totally
and
agree
I think
with that.
that's I think that's why it may be coming from Kyle to shift to a mistrial without just get a mistrial period. I'm not going to gamble anymore on the jury that these guys selected. And when you add to that, particularly if they're seeing what I predicted, then it would enhance this response, because my biggest concern was someone that was from the professional class, older woman from the professional class who has Yankee or Scandinavian ancestry, because that group is used to culturally dominating Kenosha, even though politically they shouldn't. And frankly, kind of looking down at the other parts on Kenosha. So if Kyle had a different last name, they would see him differently, even with the politics of the case. It's that kind of dynamic, long history of it. You're talking a century plus of history of it. I mean, the political infighting between these groups has been ruthless. You have someone who goes in who feels entitled to that position of power, and you put an entitled Karen with the ancestry and political and social standing for that to become the foreperson, then you get what it would logically explain exactly what we're witnessing now, including Kyle hitting an emergency button saying it's time to opt out of this, and I think they should have raised, if that's what Kyle wants, they should be making every motion for mistrial. Say, Judge, now we got jurors being followed by media or by whomever. They're being intimidated. They're being harassed. We got these protests right outside where the jury can hear them screaming, "You better acquit." The schools near the courthouse got shut down today. So parents were told their children need to stay home for remote learning because the violence is coming unless the Rittenhouse verdict goes a certain way. Plus, you have the National Guard. There's no way we can get an impartial jury.
If any of those jurors have school kids, they got that call today.
Yes, and then to my knowledge, several of them did.
Barnes, knowing because you obviously did the ops research in the area, and if this is too inside baseball and you can't tell me, I know you'll just say I can't tell you. But did the defense team consider having female defense attorneys on the team to try to negate and relate to that aspect of the jury?
They had Wisco. But Wisco was at the table the whole time, but didn't speak. And the thing is, both of these guys are kind of older school guys. So, I mean, my proposal was to bring in a whole team, even if I wasn't challenging Richard's authority yet. That was probably going to come, and maybe it was right to figure that was coming. But but I wasn't doing that out of the gate because I felt we could. The guy I recommend for the digital, who's fantastic at digital presentation of evidence, also would have caught the fact that that there was a gap between the two earlier. He's African American. His whole team is African American, and so that has an added utility. He's been in and out of courts, state and federal, across the country. He knows how to present himself, all the rest. But it would be good to have a multiracial men and women at the table in this kind of case. I have I have 2 women attorneys, but one primary one I was going to bring in, who was actually there. One of my other jury consultants, who was also the press person, is a woman. So we were going to have a much bigger, better team, and then the substance would have been handled in part by people like Andrew Branca in terms of consultation, and then a combination of me and some other people. Ideally, I mean that was the best defense. They had agreed to this back in March.
Yep. This is what goes on when doing these cases, from not just the defense perspective, but also from the DA's office perspective. When DA's offices, or at least larger DA's offices, because I only worked in, LA County, which is a huge office, you have these conversations about who the prosecutors are going to be and how they're going to be perceived to the jury, which aspects of the jury you need attorneys to connect with, who the defendant is, who the victims are, what the charges are, what the community makeup is like. And these are all conversations that go on in trying these cases, which is why, defense firms that have more diverse and deeper kind of teams of attorneys can really pick and choose how to present to the jury, because all jurors come in with bias, and you try to lean into that so they can, if they can't relate to the defendant, at least they can relate to one of the attorneys. And it really does matter.
Completely. And I wanted to reach out to black pastors in Kenosha. I have connections to a good number of them in Milwaukee because I've worked on some high profile civil rights cases, done several of them, done most of them for free. So the connections were there. And Richards just put a squash on, had said yes and then said no 2 weeks before trial. He had undermined certain things leading up to that point, but had promised, don't worry, you'll have jury selection. And I was like, well, as long as we have jury selection, everything will be okay. By the way, somebody asked why Kyle is leaving. I think it was Runkle the Bailey. Why Kyle's leaving through the back. He's not in custody. It's solely because for security purposes, he is both coming in and leaving in the back. He's not going through the front door of the courthouse. He's coming through the judge's chamber.
Yeah, can't.
Makes
and
sense.
shouldn't be in the public hallways either.
Correct. He's not. He's not. Everything is through the judge's chambers.
Question here, given what's going on, what's alleged to have gone on with the jury members being tailed by the press or whatever, if there's a mistrial at this point, I mean, coupled with everything else that has gone on, is it not a mistrial with prejudice because it will not be any less of a circus the next time around? It won't be any easier to sequester the jurors to prevent them from the outside intimidation that we see. Like, is that?
Well, I would think. No, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that was it. Is it a grounds? Is it more of a grounds for mistrial?
Those issues you identify would be grounds to transfer venue. They wouldn't be grounds for mistrial with prejudice. You know, he can still grant mistrial with prejudice, but what it is, you could say, look, we have a combination of issues. You know, 2/3 of issues mistrial without prejudice, 1/3 mistrial with prejudice. There's enough for with prejudice to grant it with prejudice. And I agree, tactically, I would have stuck with the mistrial with prejudice. I wouldn't have given the judge a lesser option, make him do it, unless Kyle told me, you just get a mistrial. I don't care what happens. You beg for a mistrial. I'm out of here. You guys were wrong about what happened in the jury process. You know, so I think, I mean, what the information we gave them before trial was that 80% of Kenoshans said they didn't want to be on the jury and were worried about participating in the jury. And Richards refused to use that information at all. So
I want to go briefly back to Wisco because and presentation and all of that. And maybe, you know, Wisco, I thought, did one of the most thorough breakdowns that we've seen so far in this trial. She did excellently tearing apart the basically the testimony of Krause. And but I got the impression that she is not, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I got the impression that she is not typically a lawyer who does a lot of speaking and presentation. She seemed a little nervous.
She's the discovery lawyer. She managed all the discovery, all the rest. Now, I don't know why it is she didn't participate much at all in trial, because she was very quick and very efficient right there on her feet going up against a prosecutor in front of the judge. So that suggested to me she had, can you get worse than Richards? Let's be honest. So, you know, given that, I think they would have been wise to use her more.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I was getting to is my statements about her appearing nervous is that she should not appear nervous or she should not be nervous because she did fantastic. And anyone would have been happy to have her giving that level of argument at any point of the case. And they should consider utilizing her a lot more.
Maybe from that side.
I'm wondering if maybe part of it is just her experience level, that maybe she doesn't have enough trials under her belt for any one of them to have felt comfortable with her taking on a more significant role in this kind of a case.
Well, Richards didn't want anybody to help, period, other than Corey. So and I don't know if you noticed, but the body language between the two of them was, but at least by Corey towards Richards, was people interpreted as negative through large parts of the trial. Now, maybe that's just Corey being Corey. He doesn't quite hide his. I don't get these lawyers that don't know how to mask.
He had a line actually at one point in the trial where he said, "If I were doing the jury questions, we would have done, or I've done this way." It felt like a little bit of a little poke across the table.
Being second chair is really, really hard when you disagree with the lead counsel and you have to A, mask it for the jury, and B, wait and then pick your battles outside the presence of the jury. I imagine that's different in private practice than it is at the DA's office. Because at the DA's office, the worst that's going to happen is a boss is going to get mad at you and you're going to get transferred somewhere where you don't have to work with that person anymore anyway, and you're going to have to drive a lot. But in private practice, it's a whole different thing with how your job is kind of tied to your income. So I imagine that's a much different calculus on how you disagree with first chair when you are in disagreement.
Yes. And I think that, I mean, I don't understand why they didn't utilize more people in general. But, I mean, that was their default on everything. So jury selection, witness preparation, video experts, independent experts, as Andrew's mentioned, use of force experts. Because, like, I wanted to bring Andrew in from the very get-go as a consultant through the case. And the whole team, there was like 12 people that said yes. I mean, people with wide-ranging experiences, specific to self-defense, as in Andrew's case, which is very rare because nobody is, Andrew's explained, you, as a lawyer, it's not economically practical for very many lawyers to have a specialty in self-defense because there's not enough cases that can pay the bills that fit that within your local jurisdiction. It's a rarity. So when you have those kind of people, you use them. I mean, when someone like Andrew's done this for a quarter century, you use them. It's insane not to use them. And I said some stuff before trial just to try to during trial try to influence Richards and the defense. But now I'm free because the case is closed up. I mean, these were just core mistakes that now we're seeing the consequences of. And a kid, an innocent kid, completely innocent kid, one of the most innocent kids I've ever seen in any case through American history, is at risk because his lawyers decided to play ego games.
Well, chances are they're going to get another crack at it because I really don't have confidence this judge is going to do a mistrial with prejudice, because the more that the attorneys talk, the more that this judge walks himself back off of a position, and the prosecution leans into it. They know this judge, right? They take getting screamed at. The prosecution's the one that's taken their beatings in this whole thing. They take their beatings and then they just keep talking, and then the judge kind of about faces his position. Why the defense didn't pick up on that is, or maybe they just chose that that's not how they did. But if you're the defense, you have more leeway than the prosecutors. You should be the one continuing to talk. You should be the one getting loud. You're the one whose client can go to prison, not the prosecutors.
They would. I think if I was at that table, they would have to drag me out of that courtroom before I stopped talking. I mean, that's just my fundamental responsibility as an advocate for the client. I'm not going to. Certainly, if the state is doing it, absolutely. But even if they weren't, I'm going to. Obviously, this judge responds to that, right? You take 3 talking points and you repeat them 20 times, so you have 60 apparent talking points. Oh, look at that volume of argument! Wow, that's amazing. Okay, I guess I'll go your way. I can do that too. This is a skill
as a prosecutor. Anyone who watches my videos knows that I restate a point 7 times. This has been beaten into the way I do things.
But you're entirely right. You can imagine a scenario where the judge has done this a number of times, where you can see he thinks through the whole process. He talks about Days of Reckoning, House of Cards. I forewarned you. He's getting up to maybe I should do this with prejudice, and you can see in your head today or tomorrow or any other day, Krause talks for 25 minutes until he's like, yeah, all right, mistrial without prejudice.
How do you walk a judge back from Day of Reckoning? I've never heard a judge use such strong language, and I can't imagine any defense counsel in his brain not being like, this is where you slam both hands on the table, pop out of your seat and say, the Day of Reckoning is here.
And maybe the defense are talking about the founding fathers.
Yes.
Right?
Well, yeah,
right? And the Constitution and stuff that this judge actually takes seriously, right? I mean, you got to.
I like it.
You have to approach people from their perspective, and this is obviously his perspective. So go there. Justice, Constitution, civil rights, founding fathers, why we have
Spartans
these
pushed over the cliff. That's what
or
you need to say.
You could go in the other direction and snatch.
I never.
I'm gonna get that phrase right.
Checked into
they've
who they were and
the defense has never
how to get it here and whatnot. So
anyway, because that requires you to snatch anything.
Oh geez, it's one thing after another.
They're not doing it. They won't do it.
But I think I'm gonna turn off here in a second. Please subscribe.
Sure.
I've been waiting to say
excuse me. If I hear anything, I'm gonna try to come back and we'll continue this later on tonight.
It was Rachel Maddow.
And yeah, so anyway, I'm going to mute it for a little bit. I'm going to leave this going until I leave. So it'll probably be another 20 minutes. But I got to start getting dressed and everything else. So anyway, guys, don't do what I want to do.
And apparently, she also had a Twitter, which has been nuked within the last 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure she got.
Oh.
I'm sure she got a lot of heat really fast.
So under her control, her
There
account had
might
sold.
be some legitimacy to that claim.
That sounds like it.
You don't nuke your Twitter if there's not legitimate. Is she a blue check on Twitter?
I
She
don't
had to
know.
be, right? And
She would have had to.
MSNBC
Probably.
producer, I
All the
think.
media
Yeah,
is.
probably.
But
MSNBC's got a
isn't there.
contract with Twitter, right? Where they just say, "Here's our list of people. Please blue
Blue
check
check
them."
Yeah.
But for
What is inside
the internet sleuths out there, when you nuke your channel or you nuke your handle, whatever, you can still get the old tweets in archive, or does it nuke them as
Yes,
well?
you can. You have 30
And you can bring
days.
it back. Yeah.
Yeah,
you
no,
can
I
bring it
find it
back
more.
Oh no, I mean
for
not the individual. Can the general public still retrieve
If it's been
tweets?
archived, yes, but generally people have to go in and like there are some internet personalities that are very controversial. So people have a bot that
They're ready
copies
to
every
go.
single tweet into a Discord. So
Okay.
if something like that was set up, or if it was way backed, but generally you have to point someone to crawl it on the way back.
That happens to
It's an-
controversial people. Oh damn.
Well, the collective
I
powers of the
wasn't
internet.
talking about you.
But it's an interesting move because it does lend legitimacy to it. If that's her account and she has it under control.
Oh no, hold. What
No,
they're
in
gonna say is they're
In
gonna
the
say she's getting
mitigating
targeted.
lawyer way, right? In the mitigating
No,
lawyer way, no, she was caught unawares by the level of harassment that she immediately received from
you go.
people due to the false report about her being involved in this, and she was forced to delete her Twitter, even though she could have put it in protected mode. But
And not
She was
just that,
doxxed in court by the judge by saying her name and her occupation.
the
she'll-
racist judge.
she'll also say that people were creating fake accounts with her profile, so she had to formally and publicly take hers down so that anyone you see is a fake
Okay.
account. What case did we see that in? That was the individual who said, "Oh, that was in the Coomer deposition where he said he had to, when he said that the tweets were not coming from me, he was referring to impersonating accounts who started creating tweets with his face on it."
Well,
But
it is
no,
interesting. It's interesting that the judge moved as quickly as he did, insofar as he says, "We don't know the truth of this. We're going to look into it. Also, MSNBC is out." It's like, wait, what? I'm not sure you can do all those at once, but it's preemptive. I mean, the judge can do what he likes.
I wonder if if the judge has been reading what MSNBC has been saying about him, right? Like,
Well, we know
I
he's been
wonder
reading
if
a lot,
always
too
possible.
much.
I wonder if
Didn't-
that's that's a
the judge say
product of
yesterday?
this.
Yesterday, can somebody refresh? The judge yesterday talked about the media at the beginning of
Oh
the
yes,
day.
he had a
Yeah.
10-minute aside.
He's talked about it
About how
about
he
three
was
or
being
3 or
unfairly
4
treated.
times.
It's
That's how
quite
you
clear
got
he's reading the media consistently, and he's not liking what they have said about him now that they do not view him as an ally in the pursuit of mob justice against Kyle Rittenhouse.
He was
So
clearly very upset about articles impugning his bingo policy. Like that was the last straw before his aside yesterday, where the defendant picks his jurors.
It's a bad
and so-
idea. I mean, his his judicial assistant or clerk should, or his bailiff can monitor the media for threats, but he shouldn't be reading the media about him while he's in trial. It's just never
Total
good.
agreement.
Like, don't read the comments when you're angry, hungry.
Well, this aside was in
Halt.
front of a pending
Hungry,
jury
angry, lonely,
request
tired.
and the drone issue. Like he took this 15 minutes in the middle of an important sequence of events. It was wild.
No, and because anyways, for anybody who had not seen it previously, he got angry with some reporting from Tubin, who said his decisions didn't make sense. So he's reading.
Wait, they're letting
non-such
Tubin
as-
report again?
Yeah, he's back.
Yeah, he's been
Only
back for a
on
little bit.
Zoom.
He,
We need
he
to
had
send-
he had a whole mea culpa thing.
We
on
need to
TV
send
at
Judge
one
Schroeder a
point,
link to our.
where they were
screen
like,
here.
"Well,
That's
this
basically
is a
what we
little
need.
awkward."
Oh,
Okay.
his
And then he
mea
continued.
culpa was hilarious. That
I'll
should be
have to go find
required
it.
viewing in every college class.
In his apology, he said he was so angry with himself that he spanked himself. I just thought of that.
That was
All right,
quick
that's the
and
dirty joke for the day.
Well,
Nick,
welcome,
I'll tell you one thing, Nick, I had a
Runkle from the
dream.
airport.
Hey,
Oh,
folks.
sorry.
Version.
The airport
Airport
version
version.
is an avatar. I had a dream last night about live streaming. I mean, this is how all invasive the last week to have
I'll be right back.
become.
Oh, now we're without a leader.
yes, Viva Fry turned YouTuber. You had a dream about live streaming.
No, I had a dream about live streaming this particular trial. Then I had the dream about what's invariably gonna happen. what's his face? Krause is going to come and say, we've decided to accept the offer for mistrial without prejudice. And then Sheriff Feasy's going to have to walk it back. Then it's going to be a question as to whether or not.
Your prediction was a dream state? Is that what you're saying?
It came to me in a dream. Yeah,
it was a vision.
And I just have to, it was a vision. No, and then what's going to happen is there will be an argument as to whether or not Sheriff Feasy's verbal motion supersedes the written motion, and now they no longer have a motion with prejudice for a mistrial.
That sounds plausible.
Yeah, I mean, how do you do something like that and then say, oh, we just want you to consider both, but he had the consideration for both in the first one regardless.
Well, Tom's question calls to mind. I think we need an answer on this. Is this sort of the equivalent to the defendant?
Yeah, that's it.
Joe,
you're
dropped off.
Joe, you're muted.
Joe, nobody hears
Joe
you.
is muted.
Okay,
Okay,
well,
Joe's pretending to talk.
Let's just.
I can talk a little bit about the Ahmaud Arbery trial because I was watching the cross-examination of that this morning, and I just want to say that was actually some good lawyering. Their DA knows how to actually do a cross-examination.
The DA on that case has been fantastic.
She was very, very good, and the defendant and getting the defendant to just admit to all kinds of things. She knows exactly where it is in the transcripts. She just hands him a copy of the police statement at the very start, and so he's literally holding the weight of his words. And it's just like, did you say this? Oh, you don't remember that? That's okay. Let me help you out on that.
Page 6.
You don't remember that Facebook post? No problem. Let me help you give you that too.
Yeah, so. that case has some very unfortunate facts for the defendant. But in the chat, if people say I know that I don't know American law, but if what I'm saying is procedurally untenable or not able to be argued in the States, someone in our panel, let me know.
There's a lot of us.
So can those arguments be made now?
Yeah,
the point of the panel isn't that we know everything. That's not how lawyers operate.
We definitely know everything.
I think the problem is that with this judge, the one who argues the longest can be persuaded. So if the judge allows it, it's allowable. And it might be appealed later, but if the judge allows it at the moment, it's allowable. And this prosecution knows how to talk this judge around in circles and get him to do what they want.
And it's almost like it was in a movie where they were talking about like being in war, when you kill your first person, it's the worst. And then sometimes people go on to commit more atrocities to dilute the ones that they've already committed. But when you're talking about committing wrongs, it's almost at the point now where the prosecution has committed so many, they've diluted the significance of all the individual overreaches that they have committed. So the more they keep doing it, the more it gets diluted and the less serious it becomes. And it just like floats out in the ether, as opposed to each and every one of them being hammered to the judge as standalone sufficient for mistrial with prejudice.
It's like in politics, right? You see, what a politician doesn't want is like 3 horrible things happening at once. They either want none or they want 50, because if there's 50, it's such a storm of problems that no one's focused on any one in particular, and it dilutes the intensity of the scrutiny.
And we've seen that throughout this trial with the admission of evidence, that it's like, okay, we'll let this go, we'll let this go. Now we're letting all these different things go. It's like, that's why I said this, it feels like there are cows and they're going to walk through the well of the courtroom, not a reference to Midwest or anything. I'm just saying the whole place is a farm, and it's just everything is so it's been havoc. It's been havoc with regular rules of evidence that I've ever seen in any courtroom I've ever been in.
When do you ever airdrop a video from some random person in a lobby and then that's sufficient foundation? Like the way that the tech has gone down in this trial has just blown my mind. It's been so lax in legal procedure, and for law students that are out there watching this that are like, why do I bother going to evidence class? It's because this is not how this normally works. Foundation matters. Tech foundation is very significant. This prosecution they didn't have their tech on a separate laptop. They didn't have things on a CD drive. Like, what is happening? It's so bad.
Well, it's important is that they're accepting downloads of random files onto apparently their secured phones.
Or their personal phones. Yeah,
it's got its own problems.
Using their personal email to email evidence around. Like, oh my gosh.
Can we go back to a critical issue that seems to have been glossed by the defense on this drone thing eventually? Mark Richards says, we now know that it was Mr. Beeman who gave over the footage. The reason that he had to say that we now know that it was Mr. Beeman is because the prosecution represented to the court that they did not know who turned over the drone footage. And then Krause goes on and says that Mr. Beeman comes in and delivers the footage however he delivers it to the detective, who then airdrops it to him. And it's like, wait a minute, you accepted. Everybody was under the impression that this came taped up in a nondescript cardboard bag. They got a thumb drive that has some crusty note attached to it or whatever. It says, "I've been watching you. Here's some evidence." And like,
it's all in
do
newspaper
not
clippings.
open until mid-trial.
Right?
Nick,
yeah.
Remind everybody, who is Beeman as an individual,
Okay.
like work person?
Brandon, no less. Brandon
yeah.
Beeman.
Let's go.
Yeah, Brandon Beeman.
Yes.
He's allegedly an employee of this. What's it called? It's something up in
Urban
the air.
Air, right?
Urban Air, which people have been confused on this. I've seen a couple different things. Some people think Urban Air, it's a drone, an aerial footage or aerial photography service. But there is also an Urban Air that is one of those indoor trampoline places. So we don't know what Urban Air this might be from, but
and we do know that name was known because it was on that Tucker Carlson video that you showed. So that name was out there. So in
There's
terms
actually
of whoever delivered it.
So if the name was out there, why couldn't the prosecution just go find it? They can find people at the state.
This is the one of the worst things that happened yesterday that the defense again didn't capitalize on. The judge asked Krause, "Wait, if you knew it was on Tucker Carlson, did you ask Tucker Carlson or Fox for the video?" And Krause equivocated. He did not answer the question. He instead said, "We asked the owner of the company, and he said that they did not have it anymore." And it's like, that's not the question, because the judge's point was, you've had a year. You could have subpoenaed Tucker Carlson. You could have subpoenaed Fox News, and they didn't do it.
So I've heard video speculation that the prosecution actually took the Fox footage and is using that, and that they edited out like the what do they call it, the Chrono, what's
the Chiron. That's how you get the weird. That's how you get the weird resolutions.
Yeah, and that's why it's been sort of like enlarged from that to sort of fill the screen into a 16:9, I guess, or something. I'm not sure.
Okay,
but that's why certain parts are cut off from that.
But also, Nick, there was, and people correct me if I'm wrong, the company, whether or not it's Urban Aired, whatever, that company apparently went belly up or shut down a few weeks after August 25th, from what I understand.
That's what the defense said. Yes.
Which is itself particularly bizarre. Like, on the one hand, if it was someone who's just a total drone hobbyist, sees there's a riot, not knowing that it's still illegal to fly a drone under areas of emergency, decides to do it, okay. If they were mandated to go out there and film and just happen to take off at literally the moment that this kerfuffle occurs, at the right corner, how many other people were mandated? Why were they there? What did they do with the footage afterwards? What was that company up to for the 3 years prior? It being an existing company means nothing. You can buy a shelf company that has existed for years and change the name and then get operational. So, yeah, when you're talking about the provenance of the evidence, does not necessarily only mean has it been modified, has it been digitally altered, which is still kind of relevant for evidence, but rather circumstances as a whole. Because there's a lot of questions that remain unanswered about how and why. And
that company had incriminating evidence on Hillary. And
well, it's even possible that this Brandon Beeman was somehow coordinating. I mean, we already suspected Zeminski was coordinating with Rosenbaum, right? And if you ever see these videos on the internet of the knockout game that sometimes kids play, they pick some victim and knock them out. Their friends are all recording it, right? So they can watch the video later. So is it possible that Brandon Beeman was, Zeminski told him, hey, listen, keep an eye out for us. When we give you the signal, send the drone up. Because the drone's only good for what, 20 minutes in the air, right? They don't stay up forever. So you really have to pick a particular window of time. Was it just coincidence that they had that drone up in this window of time?
And it
if only we had to lay a foundation, that's when you should ask those questions, which is why this evidence shouldn't be in without a proper foundation. And I just wonder if the defense thought in their defense, looking at the footage, going, either it's too blurry for anyone to see anything, so it doesn't hurt us, so we're not fighting.
That's it.
Yeah.
And this is
or
when
it's helpful.
But
we think it's obvious or we're arrogant, right? I mean,
I want
to hearsay evidence is sometimes better than direct evidence. Was that not Ralph Nader? Was that Nadler who said it first?
Jerry Nadler?
One of the lawyer politicians during the impeachment said sometimes hearsay evidence is better than direct evidence. Effectively what you're dealing with this is something that is being admitted as evidence, not by the person who shot it, and they're not there to answer questions on it.
I want to
Right.
very briefly
And that's
address...
why we don't allow hearsay evidence, right? Because it can be so compelling, but unsourced, right? Inherently untrustworthy. That's why we don't allow hearsay evidence. Not because it might not be true. Who knows? It might be true, but you can't do a credibility determination on it.
I want to briefly address this because I think, Vivi, you just brought it up. This is the Twitter photo. Now, I want to pause everybody on this. It's very possible that something like this happened, but if you look, the source video would be the one in blue, I believe. And the red video would be they cropped out this aspect from Fox.
But then somehow
label.
added
Yeah, but you
around
can't
the
have
bottom
new
and the
information if
sides.
it's coming straight from there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the problem is this information right here would all have to be added from it. So I don't know. Again, I have no idea how this happened in this way. Now the
But
original owner.
Fox might have done a weird cropping. I mean, I write for a lot of websites where they want images from me that are very particular dimensions, and so I have to crop things in a weird way to suit their purposes.
Now that was my next thing. If Fox had cropped off this image plus some information up here, then the owner of the video who had the original file could have cropped out something like this, and made it smaller. But it does appear very weird. Also,
But
this is
that
really
upper portion is just black. I mean,
this could just be
Fox
added
could have
on.
just added a black box just to make the dimensions what they require for their broadcast.
And
Right.
There's no content there.
You need to examine the person who took the
who
video.
filmed it. Yep.
Right.
This is all why. This is all why when the lawyers are like, but there's no foundation. It's all of these questions that you have to ask someone.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing that people like who are not lawyers, they're like, oh, the lawyers are trying to keep it out on a
Technicalities, yeah.
even though we all know the truth, but they're trying to hide the truth under these technicalities. No, this is why lawyers make a big deal about foundation. This is why we make a big deal about a hearsay, because otherwise you cannot vet the truth of whatever evidence is being proffered.
Not to mention, we live in a time where deep fakes are a thing. Video is easily manipulated. Audio can be manipulated. And it's the job of the prosecution to prove that the evidence is not just authentic, but not manipulated, that it hasn't been altered in any way, and to allow the defense to look at the metadata of it and see if it came from QuickTime, to see if the metadata matches up. And it's just so frustrating. I spent so many hours sitting in conference rooms with 2 detectives and a defense team going binder by binder to make sure everyone had everything, that all the evidence was there, going through the discs that I was turning over and making sure that their disc played on their computer, and sitting down and doing all of this. It's not hard. That is your job. When the prosecution is like
tedious.
It is tedious, but that's
that's what the job demands.
And as far as I'm concerned, it's a strict liability responsibility.
Yes, it is. Brady says it is.
The defendant has a constitutional right to see the evidence that's going to be used against them in court, not a degraded version, not an altered version, the actual evidence that will be used against them in court. And the prosecution cannot deliver on that obligation. They shouldn't try the defendant, or at least shouldn't use that evidence.
But not just that. Someone in the chat rightly pointed out that video was 39 seconds. A drone will record for 45 minutes. It'll record for even as long as the battery lasts. So what happened after that 39 seconds? Because I can very easily conceive of exculpatory video evidence that could have been on the end of that drone footage. Where the heck is the rest of that video?
Yes.
Or
beforehand.
Yes.
Even
right?
better.
I mean, maybe clearly it would have shown Zeminski and Rosenbaum communicating with each other. Right?
Yeah.
There would be no audio on the drone footage anyhow, above and beyond, even if it's a GoPro.
No, but if you see 2 people face to face, a couple feet apart, you can reasonably infer they're having a conversation.
No, but well,
and
you
if
know
you
what,
see where their movements beforehand, because that's part of the defense argument and part of the prosecution's argument. If you see it where they were lining up, that matters. The movements matter, and even if they don't matter, the defense gets to examine it, and the defense gets to decide it doesn't matter, not the prosecution.
Well, and someone says, it's a memory card, not a battery. It depends, actually, because if it's a mounted GoPro, it can, in theory, record video for even after the battery of the drone goes dead with audio. You'll hear a lot of blades churning, but you can still hear audio. So,
all right, guys, let me get out of here. Like I said, I've got a car I got to work on. Just got to get the oil changed. I Oh, I'll be sure to let y'all know I ordered some windshield wipers from Amazon. I say from Amazon. I order everything from Amazon, but these are Amazon Basics windshield wipers. So it'll be interesting to see how those work out. They're supposed to be here tomorrow, but since Amazon went with the United States Postal Service and left UPS, might be here Monday or Tuesday. And I'm serious about that. I've complained about it and complained about it, and it is awful. Like as soon as I look down there, it says should be here by tomorrow by 10 p.m. I'm like, well, I ain't coming tomorrow. So anyway, I'll let y'all know what's going on. I'll probably be on here later. And other than that, y'all be good at it. And aloha, good night, goodbye, sweet dreams. How do I hit stop? So hit stop on me. Bye.